Hi, everyone. This is Aaron Larson, executive editor of Power Magazine, and you're listening to the Power Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Ian Rice. Ian is the Senior Director of Programs and Services for Grid Services at Wesco. So, Ian, thank you for coming on the program, and please tell a little bit about yourself and Wesco.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on, Aaron. Been with Wesco now almost 2 years, and before that, I was with ABB and Hitachi Energy in a variety of different capacities, from engineering to marketing to sales, and then joined Wesco, like I said, about 2 years ago, leading the programs and services group within Grid Services.
Tell a little bit about Wesco. What specifically does the company do? What's your specialty? What sort of projects do you work on?
Yeah, so Wesco as a whole, we're a market leader in providing B2B distribution and logistical services, as well as supply chain services. So we're comprised of three different business units, one primarily focused on utility and broadband, another focused on the electrical construction and industrial space, primarily on the low voltage and medium voltage classes, as well as our communications group, which is at the moment, the hot market that they're focusing on is the hyperscale and data center markets. However, there's a lot of other services and other firms that they go after as well. But Wesco as a whole, we are just north of 22 billion in revenue. We're in over 50 countries, roughly 800 locations, and from a revenue standpoint, we're the leader in North America. Our presence is primarily in the U.S. and North America. About 3/4 of our revenue is here, but one of our biggest growth opportunities is bringing our capabilities and services abroad, as well as supporting our footprint in the 50 plus countries. And one of the ways that we're seeing and being able to do this is a lot of these large U.S. firms that we have strong relationships with are asking for us to scale and grow with them and their operations globally. So we'll continue to support them in doing so. And I believe that trend is only going to increase as these markets continue to develop.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit about specific types of projects that your group might get involved in? Like who do you typically work with, and what sort of things are you providing?
Yeah, absolutely. So primarily our business, and I'm sure we'll get to talking further about the specifics here later on, but primarily our business historically has been on the utility front. But because of our expanding list of capabilities and services that we're offering to the market, we're essentially taking the playbook that we've done for the last 3 decades with utilities and then providing those capabilities to the hyperscale market and data center market, as well as that renewable developer space. And we think that that's only going to increase, and we're going to have a very good mix of business between the secular trend type business, I guess you can call it, as well as our legacy utility business.
Grid modernization is a big topic. There's a lot of things happening on that front. A lot of power companies are upgrading systems, for example. How can utilities optimize their supply chain for these grid modernization projects?
Yeah, so utilities can optimize their supply chain for the grid mod projects by really taking a collaborative approach between the services themselves and how that can support the projects, but as well as having a partner to be able to leverage their sourcing capabilities and have the relationships with the right manufacturers. Really, at the end of the day, though, it's how can the logistical needs be accounted for and taken care of by the partnered firm to minimize the overall delays that are going to naturally come and mitigate the risks that come along the way with that. And that's really how they're going to maximize value in the process.
Have you seen a lot of issues with supply chains, or has Wesco basically had a pretty good and stable availability of components and parts that you're supplying to your customers?
Yeah, so historically, and if you look at it from a more historic standpoint, Wesco's been that leader to mitigate risk and keep the overall supply chain fear or issues calm. However, I mean, the what we experienced in COVID, I mean, it's no one had a crystal ball to that event. So it really goes back to my previous comment: is how do you mitigate risks when they come, and how do you minimize delays? Because naturally, there's going to be disruption in the market. especially as we continue to evolve in this new global economy that we're about to embark on. There's going to be those disruptions and delays, and it's just a matter of how do you account for them, and what is your historical background in dealing with such issues.
Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing you probably have multiple suppliers that you work with. So if somebody can't supply something, maybe you can go to another partner that maybe can. Is that how you manipulate or manage the risk?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one way of looking at it, and it's market by market, depending if it's regulated or not. In some cases, we're even looking at bringing in more tier two suppliers into the market, but at the same time, we don't want to take away from the relationships and partnerships that we have, right? So we need to prioritize our tier one and historical relationships, but there are some gaps in the market that need to be accounted for, especially as supply chain does get disrupted. So at the end of the day, first and foremost, we need to make sure our customers are taken care of and we're minimizing those delays. But we also don't want to dilute the market with tier two suppliers as well. So it is a balance and something that we think we're very practical at right now.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the benefits that utilities really gain from partnering with Wesco when they're doing grid modernization projects? Can you talk about some of those?
Yeah, so we take a really comprehensive approach to this. And in the utility market, we believe pricing should be very transparent. And it's not to say that other markets it shouldn't be transparent, but it's just typically of the scale and the magnitude of these projects. It just makes sense to build out OpEx recovery models. And so really what this looks like is we take a complete cradle to grave approach on the life cycle of said project or program. And, typically it's could be up to nine figures, right? Very, very large programs. And it all starts with building that model and understanding the complexities, what are the inputs, what are the outputs, and what constraints are there, in the short term as well as the long term. And really what's the goal of that overall program? And when we take that into account, we get to work and we start building that model. And it all starts obviously with demand management, which closely leads to a sourcing and procurement strategy. From there, we can incorporate inventory control and set up SOPs of how we want to deal with the contractors and all the other stakeholders within that program or project. And that really ties into what's going to be the project management approach as well in setting up you know all the different processes or even the returns and reclamation program.
Mm.
And we're really covering everything minute to minute, day to day, the entire duration of that project, and tying that into a singular model. But the other thing that really sets us apart from others in the market is when we go and take this program or project approach, depending on the scale of it, we're agnostic to supply. So if we're doing procurement on behalf of our customers, and so if they have direct relationships, we can facilitate that. If they're working with other distributors, we can also manage that. The whole idea here is what's in the best interest of the customer to provide the most value.
Mm. How does outsourcing factor into all of this, and how does it help, utilities or a C&I firm manage their project complexities?
Yeah, so I mean, outsourcing helps utilities and C&I firms as well focus on their core operation. So they focus on what they're good at. Let us or other firms like us focus what we're good at. So, leveraging specialized expertise in supply chain management, logistics, and workforce training. This is something we do every single day. And as I mentioned before, we're building that OpEx recovery model for these types of programs. So it's again very transparent on how we're building out these models and operating and executing according to the plan. And this is even including the real estate, the equipment, and the human capital required for that project or program. And what this all ultimately means, though, is firms can clean up their balance sheet and move CapEx allocations to OpEx. And overall, there's just a cleaner line in the sand between firms and the core business or that exact project.
Mm. And you had brought up data centers earlier in the conversation, and I know renewables are growing, but like gangbusters. That's what's mostly being added to the grid these days. How does Wesco approach, program management with these hyper growth secular segments?
Yeah, so I guess before I touch on that, let me kind of go back in history slightly. History meaning 25, 30 years. And how our group really got started is we were operating in uncontrolled environments, so really tied to emergency response situations. It became very clear though over the years that operating in controlled environments is going to be very, very simple to execute in. So that all being said, we continue to incorporate more technology and capabilities along the way and really transform ourselves into a 3PL and then now to more of that 5PL and provide a vast amount of capabilities to the market. So what happened, with that all being said, what happened right before COVID and then COVID really launching us into this huge new demand environment for our sets of capabilities is the renewable and hyperscale markets saw what we were doing and realized that we could easily start helping them execute on their issues as well with this program management approach. Because at the end of the day, it is site logistics. It's the bread and butter of what we do at Wesco. And us being able to be agnostic to supply, my group specifically, leverage suppliers of our $24 billion of Wesco spend, and we can get a warehouse operational for our customers in 90 days, and now in over 50 countries. I mean, you asked about our international presence earlier. That's what we're seeing now in these types of secular markets. So really being able to scale with our customers and provide that value. And to give you an example of this, I have a customer right now where we have 1 million square feet of warehouse and yard that's just housing solar panels and large apparatus. So and large apparatus meaning transformers, breakers, and switches. I believe there's some SSVTs there as well. But anyways, we're able to extend that warranty for our customers to the point where the warranty doesn't start until it even leaves our facility. So that's the extra value and the extra steps that we're taking to be able to really support these more secular markets.
And I'd like to get into asset management because I think that's something that you also deal with. And I'm wondering what sort of challenges do utilities and commercial and industrial firms face when it comes to asset management, and how does Wesco address them?
Yeah, so all firms in this day and age are really affected by just about the same challenges in regards to asset management. So whether it's weather related, cyber, supply chain volatility, Wesco has solutions for all these challenges, but at the same time, we've been doing it for decades, right? It's not like we're a new up and coming company. So we're able to leverage all the technology that we implement into our core business and all of our distribution centers, as well as pull in the 23,000 employees that we have and their expertise to solve these problems. So I mentioned storage being a huge issue right now in the market. But again, we're able to set up those large facilities and provide storage solutions for large apparatus. And at the end of the day, you're mitigating risk on these key core components to these large industrial builds, data center builds, renewable applications, or utility programs. Because some of these lead times are now out 4, 5, 6 years. So you can't have anything happen to those assets, or you're going to just continue to delay your project further.
The timeline seems to be getting longer and longer for all of these, lead times. So I'm happy to hear that you've got some sort of way to manage that. And I'd like to also talk a little bit about just the energy transition in general. What role do you see grid modernization playing in the transition?
It's clear that grid mod projects are only going to increase, and they're critical to building a resilient, cost-effective, and sustainable energy system. These projects enable utilities to integrate renewable energy sources, manage demand effectively, and mitigate risks associated with the aging grid and all these extreme weather events that we're also facing. So, Wesco, we're taking all this into consideration to support grid mod programs with ERP coordination and integration, having our folks actually do the work alongside, our customers, but at the same time, bringing best practice to demand management as well as project management for, these large distribution, substation, and transmission projects.
Can you talk a little bit about Wesco's approach to working stock programs for contractors, and how do you incorporate those into your offerings?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is pretty simple. Our working stock programs ensure that contractors have that immediate access to critical materials, but at the same time, we don't have the burden of holding excess inventory, which is key to really eliminating waste in the overall model and system. So by managing, a strategic amount of inventory at specific locations, and integrating them with the ERP systems, it really enables, seamless operations to help reduce costs for our customers.
Hmm. And what role does technology play in improving inventory management for utilities? Are you guys using AI in any way, or is there other technology that you find being really useful?
Yeah, the crazy thing is AI isn't a buzzword anymore. We've been testing out other companies' technologies and trying to figure out how we could incorporate them into our day-to-day operations, whether it's on the core business or within a more specialized group like that I'm a part of. But at the end of the day, we realized that we could actually build our own, Gen AI systems to be customized and catered to our exact logistical and everyday business needs. So we've actually done that. We're actually in the phase right now of kind of going through training and figuring out ways to implement the technology we've created. So to me, I didn't realize we'd be able to scale it that quickly and realistically almost under a year, but we did. So it's an exciting time. But even before AI came to be in our industry and in our space, technology as a whole for supply chain, enhances visibility, increases accuracy, and just makes the systems more efficient. So no matter what technology comes our way, we're going to need to integrate it in to just make sure that we're optimizing all the models we put first for our customers.
And what about returns and reclamation? How does Wesco help utilities manage those aspects?
Yeah, so we streamline the returns and reclamation process really by coordinating with suppliers and our customers to ensure that the proper disposal or reuse of materials. So, I mean, this is key though for a lot of these larger programs because it minimizes waste and supports, their sustainability goals as well as sustainability is one of Wesco's top pillars as well. But it really reduces costs as well associated with the project and overruns that excess inventory as well, especially if it can be reutilized in a different part of the project itself.
And I guess my last question revolves around regulatory requirements and how does Wesco ensure compliance with regulatory requirements during projects?
Yeah, so Wesco as a whole, I mean, we stay ahead of regulatory changes by collaborating closely with the utilities themselves, but as well as leveraging our expertise in that procurement and logistical space, as well as asset management space. So our solutions are tailored and designed, to meet the industry standards, all while helping utilities meet the compliance requirements and achieving, their goals. So another example of this is there's a federal utility up in the Northwest that we work very closely with from a program perspective, and we have Buy American resources that are part of their OpEx recovery model or that capital project that we're working on with them. So it's not just the logistical needs we're taking care of and the project management needs or procurement needs where we also have very specialized folks that are tailored to help support these programs across the board.
Well, Ian, this has been a really interesting conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. Is there anything that I haven't asked about that maybe you'd like to say or any last words for the audience before we wrap up the podcast?
No, I think I'm good. It was great to talk with you, Aaron, and too bad we weren't able to connect at Distribute Tech. It would have been really cool to do this in person.
Yeah, it just didn't seem to work out for us, but that was an interesting event. I was glad to see you there. And again, for listeners, I've been speaking with Ian Rice. He's the Senior Director of Programs and Services for Grid Services at Wesco. It's been a pleasure speaking with you and look forward to connecting again somewhere down the road.
Thanks, Aaron.